Dea, what should I charge as a freelancer? This is one of the most frequently asked questions I get via email, via Instagram, on my DMs, is how much I should charge for insert here. How do I calculate my rates when I'm just getting started as a freelancer? So in this video, let's go through my entire step-by-step process to calculate out your minimum hourly rates as a freelancer. I will also share some of my biggest pricing tips and lessons learned from 5 years of freelancing online at the end of this video. Hey, my name is Dea, freelancer, digital business manager, and most recently, entrepreneur. And as always, you can find sections on the play bar below if you want to skip to a certain part of the video. Your time is precious, so take what you need. And if you want to watch this on 2x, I will not be offended whatsoever. Okay, let's dive into the video. If you're looking for clarity on what type of payment option to do with a client, whether that's hourly, package, retainer, commission, value-based, I have a whole other video all about that. I'll link for you in the top right corner. I never know which side it is, but in this video, we're talking specifically about how to step-by-step figure out your hourly rates for yourself as you're getting started as a freelancer. Now, here is the thing. It's really hard to get going with project-based or retainers or commission if you're just getting started because your familiarity with industry averages, with your competition, with your clients' comfort level in terms of their budget and revenue, the value of your work, all of that tends to come with experience and time. So if you're just getting started, I normally recommend calculating out some sort of hourly rate so that you have a basis for creating packages or retainer packages. You don't have to tell your clients about your hourly rate if you don't want to charge hourly, that's totally fine, but you should have some sort of inkling secretly in the back of your mind that you can always refer to as a foundation for your calculations one way or another. So let's talk through this step-by-step guide on figuring out your freelance hourly rates. I'm using an expenses first approach to ensure that you are covering the cost of your business and your livelihood, your standard of living, first of all, so you are a profitable business owner and your business actually makes sense for you to be running. I'm going to talk through this process step by step in this video, but I also have a Google Sheet calculator template that calculates it all automatically for you. You can find a link to the product below. It's not free as a heads up, but it is super cheap and it will figure out all the numbers for you after you input like a few key preferences you have. It also comes with a step-by-step Notion template walkthrough if you prefer Notion, but again, in this video, I'll walk you through it. So if you just grab a piece of pen and paper, you'll be all set to go. All right, step by step. So step one is to calculate out your expenses to figure out how much you actually need to survive. So grab your piece of paper, write 2 columns on your piece of paper. One of them, label them business expenses. The other one is your personal expenses. Under business expenses, write out everything you need to pay for in your business on a monthly basis. So as freelancers, we tend not to have a ton of expenses, which is awesome, but don't forget about things like taxes and fees, so like income tax, any insurances, registration, tools and tech, so subscriptions, equipment, Wi-Fi, laptops, computers, professional development, trainings, courses you're buying to develop your skill set, office, so co-working budget or home office equipment, laptop, mouse, keyboard, that kind of stuff. And then move on to your personal expenses. So that's everything you regularly spend money on in your life. So insurances, Netflix, rent, food, entertainment, cats, dogs, kids, everything. Put that out and ideally list it as detailed as possible. So once you have your 2 columns, sum up your business expenses and sum up your personal expenses. Then add those 2 numbers together into your total expenses. Write that number down. Step 2 is to figure out how much you are able to work on a monthly basis. One caveat here, we ideally want to know what your billable hours are essentially. Billable hours don't mean every single hour you're working. It means hours that you're working for a client that a client is paying you for. So non-billable hours, you can think of things like sending invoices, discovery calls, networking, professional development, that kind of stuff. Nobody is really paying you to do that, so we want to kind of keep that in mind, the difference between billable and non-billable. So start by figuring out how many hours you ideally want to work for clients per month. Take into account weekends as well as annual vacation, any holidays, potential sick days too that you want to plan for or budget for. So as an example, let's say I want to work personally 35 hours a week and have 4 weeks of vacation a year. So if I take 4 weeks of vacation a year, then I'm working 48 weeks a year, right? 52 minus 4. So 48 weeks times 35 hours per week equals 1,680 hours. And then we divide that by 12 for the amount of months in a year. So then on average in a month, I will work around 140 hours once I've taken into account my vacation. If you're not a fan of all this math, again, my freelance hourly calculator is your friend. It'll do all the math automatically for you, link below. So take the amount of hours you can work on average in a month and write that down. For me, I would write down 140. Step 3, it's division time. Now we're going to divide your monthly expenses, so that number you got from step 1, by the amount of monthly hours you're going to work, so the number you got from step 2. So let's say my monthly expenses total to 2,500, and per month I work 140 hours. So I'll do 2,500 divided by 140, which equals 17.8. That means at a minimum, I need to charge $17.80 an hour to cover all of my life and business expenses for my business as a freelancer, working the amount of hours that I'm able to per week. That means if I charge $17.80 an hour and work 35 hours, I will cover all my expenses, but I won't make any additional profit in my business. It will all be purely paying for my business and life expenses, rent, food, Netflix, everything that I listed out, but it won't be helping me save for the future or anything. There's basically nothing left over. I like calculating this number first because it tells you really at a bare minimum what you should be charging to sustain your life and business. This is also really good because it gives you a lot of confidence when you're talking to clients. Like if someone says, oh, can't you do this for like $10 an hour? You'll be like, no. Sorry, I did the math, like this is what I need to sustain my business and livelihood. Done, it's not personal, it's math. The doorbell. Done, it's not personal, it's math. You're not a charity, you're not out here trying to run an unprofitable business, right? So step 4 is research. Now, step 4 is where we can begin to kind of input and take into account other factors to help us better contextualize our rates, because our rates don't really just exist in a vacuum, right? We can't just say, okay, I need to make at least $5,000 an hour to sustain my lifestyle, and that's how it is. I always fly first class. We have to kind of see what the market dictates and match what's going on there to ensure we're competitive as freelancers. So here are a few things I would consider. For one, what phase of freelancing are you currently in and what priorities do you currently have? If you're just getting started, you may want to start at your bare minimum to incentivize clients to work with you, to allow you to learn and grow, and then slowly increase your rates from there. For me personally, I started at $10 an hour because I wanted to learn and get my foot in the door with clients. I didn't really have any proof, I had no network, and it worked really well because I scaled my rates super fast after that. Second, do some competitor research. So this knowledge will really come as you go along as well, but you can do some Googling, find other freelancers' rates, check out freelance marketplaces, see what the averages are, see what others are charging for the services you want to offer for your level of experience and knowledge in the industry, etc. Are your rates competitive with what is currently going on in the market? Third, also don't forget to account for your unique skill set, like your blend and your mixture of skills, your training, industry knowledge, your unique selling proposition, aka what makes you unique and what makes you better than others in your market. And fourth, finally do a little bit of market research. How big is the market that you are going for, your target client? Can you niche a little to demand higher rates? And demand and supply in the industry you want to go into is essential to look at too. If there is a ton of demand for your skill set and not much supply, you'll be able to increase your rates tremendously too. And as a heads up, if you don't feel like you totally understand everything there is to know about your market, your competitors, and where you stand, that's okay. That's normal when you just get started. As you work more and more and talk to other fellow freelancers and get to know your clients, you will get a better and better picture of rates. Don't feel like you have to be like 100% sure before starting. Just start. You can always adjust as you go along. Now, I just know a lot of people here are like, Dale, give me actual numbers. So broadly speaking, from my experience, rates differ greatly depending on task, services, industry, even geographical location, etc. But I will throw some numbers at you for those of you looking for those numbers. So personally, again, these will differ greatly. Personally, when I'm looking for help with admin level help, so things like virtual assisting, customer service or support, email management, that kind of stuff, I normally expect to pay between $10 to $25 an hour, depending on experience. If I'm looking for specialized help like tech, copywriting, design, I normally expect to pay around $35 to $55 an hour, but it can go higher depending on their level of experience. If I'm looking for highly specialized skill sets help like strategy, managerial, legal, coaching, financial advice, I normally expect to pay $60 plus an hour, can go up to a couple $100s an hour. But again, these rates will range greatly. These are just numbers. Keep in mind that they can differ, but I just wanted to give you some numbers. Here are my top tips. Number 1, don't do a fixed hourly amount. Do a salary range. I wish I could scream this off the top of the roof. That was a weird way of saying. I wish I could scream this off the rooftop. You get it. I wish I could say this loudly. Don't just tell clients my rate is $10 an hour, because that gives you no flexibility. I used to always say my rate range is between $30 to $35 an hour, depending on the size of the contract and the type of work, but I'll be able to give you a better quote once I get some more details on what exactly you need help. Then you can also go up or down depending on how bad you want the client. It gives you wiggle room. 2, do a scaling salary over time. I think a lot of times when people come from corporate, they're really afraid to start too low because they think that they're going to get stuck at that rate. As a freelancer, you'll be able to increase your rates at way more opportunities as you go along. So I scaled from $10 an hour to $20 or $25 in the first year alone. Then I went up to $50 an hour plus in the following year. So in my opinion, if you don't have a lot of experience in freelancing or client connections, start lower to incentivize people to actually work with you, because you, think about it from their perspective. You have no social proof, right? They don't know if you're gonna do what you say you're gonna do. So incentivize them with a lower rate so it's less risk for them, and then you can grow and network from there to increase your rates. Also, think about the short-term and long-term return to you. So the short-term return may be lower by starting lower, but the long-term return is potentially so much higher because you're investing in your own growth by working with more people, which means you'll be able to charge more so much faster. And this is a personal decision, but when I first started, I was very negotiable on my rates because I wanted the client and experience more than I wanted the immediate money. And I honestly believe that led to me scaling my income so fast. So have a think about that. Look at everything in context. My third tip is make sure you understand that pricing is relative. You know how sometimes people say things like, oh, that's so overpriced, or oh, that's so cheap. Realizing that that's all of that is relative was such a good lesson for me to learn. Understand that when someone says, oh, you're too expensive, it means you're too expensive for me and where my business is at right now. Pricing will always be a relative subject. So that's why it's so important to do the proper steps and then just begin and get out there and test your pricing. If one person tells you you're too expensive, go out and try that pricing again with multiple people to get a better feeling of what the market says overall, and don't just take one person's opinion, especially if it's somebody like your family member or a friend who is not even your target client. So Mia asked this in my free Facebook group, how do you have confidence in your pricing? That's a great question, Mia. So for one, when you calculate out your rates like this step by step, you can confidently say, this is minimum what I need to sustain my lifestyle and business. That's a very black and white thing. It's nothing negotiable, nothing personal, nothing emotional. It gives your pricing a concrete foundation to work off of. I find that sometimes when people are insecure in their pricing, it's because they don't know what their pricing is based on. They just randomly Googled a number and said, this is my price. So make a list and go through this step by step. Then you have a clear foundation. So you can make yourself a list like, my pricing is based on how much I need to make to sustain my business and my life, my 5 years of experience in this industry, my training that I paid for via this course, my soft skills means that I'm an over-deliverer and a great communicator, etc. Make yourself a bullet point list to base your pricing off of. And just a tidbit, if you have gone through this step-by-step process to determine your pricing and you know its foundation is solid based on your research, and a potential client says they can't afford you, that's okay. That's not on you. That's not your responsibility to adjust to them. Refer them to someone else. And another tip is, especially for confidence, practice saying your pricing out loud in front of a mirror. Confidence really comes a lot from repetition, so I got more and more confident the more discovery calls I went on. So practice to yourself saying your rates, my hourly rates range from $40 to $50 an hour, depending on the size of project and type of work. Say that over and over and over again and go on a ton of discovery calls. It will come, I promise. Okay, that's it. I'm thinking actually about recording a video about how I increase my rates with my freelance clients. If you want to see that video, let me know below and I'll catch you in the next one.